Hello, welcome to this short video on Uttitha Trikonasana extended triangle pose. Now, this pose comes up a lot in many classes, whether you're taking more traditional classes or more creative, perhaps vinyasa flow classes. Triangle pose is an amazing pose that so many teachers will include in their sequences because there's a whole host of benefits. But it is also a pose that so many people struggle with, and it's definitely something that I have struggled with in the past. So I thought it would be helpful to share a few insights that have supported me in getting a little bit more comfortable with this somewhat uncomfortable asana. So, Uttitha Trikonasana, there are a few variations in how it can be practiced, but simply we have the feet separated on the mat. We extend one arm forwards, and remember it's extended triangle pose. That arm comes down, the left leg could hold onto the ankle, the floor. Some people might take it to the outside of the foot or the big toe, and then the upper body rotates and the right arm extends to the sky. Now, I remember when I first started practicing yoga, I just did not get this pose, and it is now one of my favorites. And I think for me, part of this has come from being a little bit more intuitive with the alignment and finding a way to work the pose with my body rather than trying to fit my body to the traditional alignment of the pose. So let's start by setting it up and we can work through it together. Let's start with the right leg forwards. And you're going to take a step back. You might come into this from any number of poses, but let's just come from standing for ease. Now, it's always worth warming up the body before going into a particular pose, especially if we're going to be holding it for a little bit of time. So I definitely would encourage you to do this after a short practice, a few sun salutations, just to warm up the body. Now, the first thing we want to do is get really grounded through the feet. If the feet are too far away, it can be quite destabilizing through sort of the pelvis and things. So let the step be a comfortable length. For me, that's a little bit shorter than my warrior two stance, but you can have a little bit of a play. Now, typically, we are taught that we want everything to be in one line, as if we're leaning on a wall, and you can actually use a wall for stability and practice sort of leaning the upper body against a wall. That can be quite a good way to practice this pose. But for me, because of the quirks and things that I've learned about my body, I've adjusted my alignment slightly in this shape so that I can get more connected and feel what I'm doing. And in order to do that, it can be quite useful to just have a little bit of a play with your hips kind of in space. And you want to get connected, lifting up through the thighs and then extending through the side body. And depending on where you position your hips in relation to your torso, you might feel this pose in different places. The hamstring, the side body, the hamstrings, the side body, or elsewhere. Now, looking up to that top hand can be strenuous on the neck. So have a look down at the right foot and just see how that feels. You could also look straight ahead of you. Think about lengthening the underside of the waist. And if that's hard to do, rather than focusing on how low down this right hand can be, what if you move it up a little bit and focus on lengthening through the side body? Now, with that long side body, we want to rotate to stack the shoulders one on top of one another. And when we think about doing that, what tends to happen for a lot of people is we just move the arm back. But actually the rotation comes from the upper body. Now, as you're focusing on the upper body, stay connected to the lower body. You want to really root down through that back foot, energize the thigh, and make sure you're taking the pressure out of the back of the knee by lifting up through the front thigh. Another way to help this feel a little bit more supportive, swap to the other side, is to use a block. So that hand could come down onto a block, and we use that to Really focus on strengthening through the side body again. So the more you root down through your feet and gather up through your legs, the more extension you can get through the torso, and that extension facilitates the rotation. And you can see my arms, hopefully, are extending. Oh, my right arm is extending up to the sky here rather than back behind me. That puts a lot of pressure on my shoulder if I do that, but it also is kind of tricking myself. Really, the rotation, to get the benefit of that rotation, it needs to come from the torso. So we're lifting up through the inner thighs, hugging them up, lengthening through the spine. The crown of the head is long, away from the tailbone. And there's easeful breath. If you're pushing to a point where the breath is compromised, then you're probably going into the pose to a point that doesn't serve you. And I think as a general rule, no matter what pose we're moving into, through, or out of, if we're compromising the breath, then it's not really of service to us. So be somewhere that you can be with your breath. And for me, that realization that I don't have to be down here struggling with this shoulder rolling forwards just to get my hand down to my foot or my ankle. By coming up, letting it be spacious, focusing on that rotation. You could even place their hand on the hip to focus there, then you forget about what's going on with this hand. And find a way to make sure that you've got the extended part of the triangle pose, because this is Uttitha Trikonasana, extended triangle pose. So root through the feet, hug up, create the space, the length in the torso. Reaching, 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 sending your hips back in the opposite direction to the crown of the head, and taking the hand down, reaching the right arm up if we're on the left side. And that's it. So I hope that gives you some useful things to consider when you're coming into Uttitha Trikonasana. Have a little play. Enjoy the process of finding how this pose can support your body, and let go of the idea of what it needs to look like. It's the same with all of these elements of our asana practice. Like, it's worth continuously revisiting, reconsidering, and bringing awareness to them so that our practice doesn't become another pattern, but actually a continuous evolution for us to explore. I hope you enjoyed that class. I'll see you soon. If you enjoyed this class and you'd like more tips or to make use of my on-demand video library, I've got loads of classes to share in my studio, The Practice, and I've popped a link to the 7-day free trial in the box below.